Hello,
Welcome,
everybody.
welcome. We are very, very excited to have Munif Saza, the silver winner of the Closers Olympic of this year, of what, a week ago or so? So we want to welcome you to the group. Welcome to the virtual for wholesaling Israel. We're very excited to have you, Munif.
Thank
Huge
you,
honor.
Chaim. Appreciate you, Yoav.
Huge honor having you, buddy.
It's my
Awesome.
honor. It's actually my honor to be here. So I didn't actually know that Israel had such a large virtual wholesaling community. This is amazing. Like when I found out, Yoav actually reached out to me, and I had no idea. I was like, no freaking way. And I'm just honored to be here. So thank you guys for having me and just putting me up here. Thank you.
Thanks again, Munif, and again, honor having you. And again, you came with the Sub 2 family hat. Show it to us.
Oh, I always. Yeah,
So
when I
shout
started
out
again,
calls. Yeah, I think again we're going to talk about it a bit later, but shout out to the Sub 2 family. I mean, I'm part of it, right? 100%. It's one of the best communities by far for creative finance in any type of way or form, and that's absolutely amazing. I mean, I've been when it was around 300 members in the beginning. Now it's a huge community. Munif, how much is it? Almost 3,000, right?
Almost 3,000, yeah.
So 100%. Any person who is interested or thinking even on creative, Sub 2 all day, every day. Let's get to it.
So first of all, again, we want to speak about again. Yoav and I, we actually watched two of your conversation during the Closers Olympics, just to kind of familiar ourselves with your style, with your demeanor, with your strategy. And it was super interesting because last week we hosted RJ Bates. So it was very, very different style, very different approach. And next week we're gonna host Max.
Nice.
So I think it's gonna be very interesting. Our goal is to kind of get different perspective about closing, about mindset of a closer, how you approach a conversation with a seller, because it was fascinating. So tell us first of all again, how was your experience? Because you were kind of the underdog. Nobody knew about you, and you kind of came out of the blue. So how did you even got nominated to be a part of it?
Oh, wow. So the way I didn't want to do it, people asked me to do it, and I was too scared. Like I was like really nervous. I was like, no, I'm not good enough. These guys are big dogs. Like I've only done back then I've only done 7 deals. Like when they asked me,
Okay.
And the way they asked me was on wholesale hotline. Pace Morby goes, yeah, I bet $5,000 one of my students could go win this thing or at least place top 3. Munif, go DM Elijah right now. I'm like, oh my God, seriously? What? Are you gonna really do this to me? So I did. I DM Elijah, and Elijah asked me to fill out this application. So me and Daniel both, Daniel Quijano, he was another Sub 2 student who competed with me. We both DM Elijah, and we have to fill out this form. We actually have to make a video of why we think we are suitable candidates. And I actually posted my intro video on Instagram when I made it. And they said, okay, you and a bunch of other people are going to role play with us and the judges, and we're going to just see who has the best role plays, and we're going to pick 6 of them. And it all happened so fast. I was actually at my best friend, the guy who got married. I was telling you, one of my friends got married this past weekend. His bachelor party in Austin, Texas. We've been planning it for over a year. Formula 1 race. So it's like the really, really fast cars where they change out the tires for under 2 seconds. I was there that weekend. That's when the role play was. And so I'm like, crap, I can't miss this. Like, I can't miss this. So I left the race early, and I'm in the parking lot. It's like a mile walk, and I'm at this giant parking lot. I'm getting no service, and I'm like, maybe I should just quit. Maybe I should just give up. Maybe I don't know. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to make everyone disappointed if I quit. So there's a fence, and I hop the fence, and I keep walking. I walk for like another mile, and I'm in this like vacant lot in Austin, Texas. There's like nobody around me. And I literally took a video of where I am for the judges to say, hey, if I don't get service, this is where I am. I'm so sorry. And I got service. There was like a cell tower. I got full bars. I dial into the Zoom, so I can't even get into the Zoom like properly. I dial in with a phone number, and they call my name, and they're like, "Where's Munif? Where's Munif? Where's Munif?" And Aaron Bevins was one of the judges. He was texting me. He's like, "No, Munif is here. He's the dial in." So I was a dial in. Nobody knew my face, and all the competitors. They told me later. A lot of the competitors were like, "Oh, this guy's done. He didn't even like get in on a Zoom. Like he's just on a phone number. He's done." And Elijah was my role play, and he was mad. He was like, "This guy," he threw everything at me, and I was able to like dodge him, and they liked me, and I got in. So that's my story of actually getting into day one, where like me and 5 others got into day one, and the experience was stressful, bro. Like I was so stressed out. You asked me what the closer's experience was. So stressful. I lost all my hair. That's how stressed I was.
No, you didn't have it before. Don't.
Just kidding.
So tell us again, what's your background before you got into real estate? Because again, you're a very smooth talker in a good way. You are very calm,
intelligent.
Very intelligent conversation. Again. And for whoever didn't got the recording of the Closers Olympics, again. We are not going to getting anything out of it. We don't have any affiliate links. I think we should, but that's another topic. Go get it. That's a great. Again, you can learn from so many styles, and you have a very unique style. So, what's your background? What were you doing before real estate?
That's such a good question. So, I'm from Bangladesh. I was born in Bangladesh. My parents raised me here, and they were like, "Munif's going to be a doctor." And I was a little baby. I was like, I'm going to be a doctor. And so I grew up in like biotech, science, all that. And I'm like, this is great. I'm going to be a doctor. And I go to college. I do pre-med. I actually get a degree in biomedical engineering because I'm going to be a doctor. And I shadow my aunt, who's a doctor. I shadow her for 3 months. And I'm like, holy crap, this is terrible. This is so terrible. It's not for me. Like, I'm not doing this. Like, no way. She works like 15-hour days. Gets 5 minutes with a patient and just is like writing notes. And I'm like, why can't we talk to the patients? Like, let's spend more time with the patients. And she's like, I can't. We have so many. And I'm like, I can't do this. So I tell my mom and dad, I'm like, Mom, Dad, I'm not going to be a doctor. And they're like, okay, that's fine. What do you want to do? And that no one has ever asked me that in my life. Like, I was a really good kid. I listened to my parents and I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know who I am if I'm not going to be a doctor. And I was in depression for like 2 years. Like I was super depressed. I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what there is to do. So I lived in my mom's basement for 2 years after I graduated college. And I played video games to avoid facing the uncomfortable feelings that I just literally just played video games in my mom's basement. And there was a moment where I went to see one of my best friends graduate. He got a double major in something. I went to his graduation party and I didn't have money for a beer. I was so broke. And his buddy was like, hey man, like I'll buy you your beer. And it was like the nicest thing anyone's done. I was like so overwhelmed. I was like, this guy doesn't even know me. And I'm like, that's so nice.
Faith in humanity again.
Yeah, dude. I was like, and he had he just graduated. He had a job. He did all the right things and he's making money. I graduated. I didn't have a job and I couldn't even buy my own beer. He paid for me. He got and so I was like, I want to do that. Like, I want to do what he did for people. And so the next day I tell my dad, I'm like, Dad, let me at least like, what's an easy career to get into? And he's like, well, get into IT, get a job. And so I taught myself IT for 6 months. And I got a job as a database admin. And now I got promoted. I'm a cybersecurity engineer. I'm still actively an engineer. I don't do real estate full-time. Real estate's actually my side gig. I'm full-time cybersecurity. Not yet. So I'm a cybersecurity engineer. I know that was a long-winded answer, but that's my background.
I think it's important. Yeah. Knowing where you come from and your story, I think it says a lot, because obviously we're going to go into depth now, asking more questions, but getting your story, I think it's very important.
Thank you.
So how long have you been doing it, real estate? Again, and when you made the decision that real estate is what you want to do, and what kind of what kind of courses did you take, or how did you educate yourself?
Oh, that's such a good question. So I actually read the book, and you guys might all know this book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read it in 2019. Yeah, you have it back there, Chaim. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I love that book. I read it in 2019, and so I have a cousin. His name is Faisal. He's also in sub two. Me and I was like, dude, we gotta go to this seminar, and I drag him to the seminar in 2019, and then we sign up, and it's like it's a lot of money to actually like be in their program. I didn't have any money, so I actually took out like I paid on credit cards, and it was good. I met a lot of people, but they never actually taught me how to talk to sellers. Like I didn't know how to do that, and I come from like an engineering and STEM background, so I thought my highest and best use was like comping and deal analyzing, which I hate that stuff. I actually hate that stuff. I just was trained at a young age to like be good at it, so I've been good at like math and science and stuff, but I actually don't like integrator work, right? I don't like doing that stuff. I like talking to people. That's just what I like. That's who I am. And so I would comp, and I would what I call like spin the hamster wheel, where you're doing a lot of work and you're actually not
paralysis analysis.
Yes, exactly. Analysis paralysis. I did that for like 6 months. I put a bunch of money. We did like 2 other mentorships on top of that, and like I talked to maybe 8 sellers in a span of 2 years.
Wow.
2 years. So I didn't know what the heck to do. And so I don't really count that because I spent like a few hours a day on it, and it was just like a bunch of BS and like just analysis paralysis. So Faisal and me, we ended up splitting. I ended up saying, hey, I can't afford to keep this business funded. And so he was on his own. He took on all the liabilities, and he's like, hey, I have to talk to sellers, and he's doing well now. And in about 2 years, he's like, hey man, he gives me a call. He's like, are you still interested in real estate? And I'm like, yeah, I spend maybe like an hour a day on it. I pull like lists, and I like SMS them. And I thought you could literally close a deal by SMSing because I was too afraid to get on the phone. And I still thought at this point I was an integrator and I'm supposed to generate leads and do all this analysis crap. And he's like, you need to look up Pace Morbid. I'm like, who the heck is Pace Morbid? He's like, look him up on YouTube. I'm going to send you links. And in 48 hours, I'm on the phone with one of Pace's sales reps going, I need to do this. This is the last mentorship I'm going to join, but I need to be here. And I joined. And the first month of the mentorship, nobody knew who I was. I did what I was doing, which was just like the same stuff, but inside this. And then I think somebody in the group, I think Caroline, was like, listen, the same thing you're doing over and over again will yield the same results, right? You're crazy if you try to do the same thing and get different results. So I was like, crap, I have to just suck it up and learn how to talk to sellers. So I did the daily dial. For those that don't know, Sub 2 has something called the daily dial. It's 4 hours of role playing we have every day. And I think Eyal, he might be here. Do you guys know Eyal?
Yeah. He's a member.
One of my boys. He's here. I think he's here watching right now. He's in the daily dial with me. Like he's always, and so that's where I actually met him. And I was like, Munif, you're going to go in the daily dial. You're going to raise your hand and you're going to volunteer to role play. And the first week I promised myself I would do that. I actually chickened out every single day. I was so scared. And then the second week I was like, okay, Munif, if you don't do this, if you don't raise your hand, you have to quit real estate forever. You have to quit. Your job is to raise your hand every single day until you're a closer on the daily dial, meaning you're one of the instructors. Until you're an instructor, you're going to raise your hand every day. So I raised my hand the first day. I'm so scared. I'm so nervous. And they give me somebody to role play with. And the guy goes, hello. He's like, hello, why are you calling me? And I go, I want to buy your house. Is your house for sale? He's like, no, I'm getting all these calls all the time. Like, stop calling me. I go, okay. And I hang up the phone. And they tell me, they're like, Munif, that's great. Good job. But don't hang up the phone on the seller. So that was my first daily dial. Did that every single day until now. I'm actually an instructor on the daily dial. And the rest is history.
Yeah.
Beautiful. How long I think in the group? Sorry, Kyle. How long you're in the group already? In the sub 2?
Since end of March. So about 7
Beautiful.
months. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So I think, again, one thing that I noticed just by you here for the 10 or 15 minutes that you talk and the conversation is that you really like to tell stories.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know if you know. I know a lot of. I just heard multiple stories that you shared right now. The parking lot story. You are on your wedding, friends. How did you become? You went to the Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I saw that you do some of it on the calls as well. Is that intentional? Like you tell a story how you help somebody else, and this is basically you make an offer by telling somebody else how you help them. So the person's name kind of, okay, if you helped her, you can help me. Do
Make
you
an
do it
offer without making. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I naturally tell stories when I hang out with people. So like right now, it's like we're hanging out. So I naturally do that. It's fun. I've been doing that since I was a little kid. My earliest memories of me storytelling is all of my extended family laughing because I'm telling them a fun story. And that's like one of my
Okay.
happiest memories is like all my aunts and uncles and cousins, just like we're all in a circle in Bangladesh when I went back to visit, and I'm like sharing a story about something and everyone's laughing and having a good time. It's like one of my happiest memories. So I've been doing that since I was a kid. Now in seller calls, you know who taught me that? Because I didn't do that in seller calls. Al taught me that. He's like, you have to use third-party stories in seller calls. And so he gave me, he's one of my coaches. He taught me a lot of what I know. And he's actually here right now. He's in the group. He taught me that the power of third-party stories. He's like, Munif, just do that in seller calls. He's like, ask questions and then share a story. And I was like, oh, really? I'm allowed to do that? And he's like, yeah, just do that. So I started doing that. And then I started seeing results.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's awesome. Story sell. Again, numbers tell, story sell. Have you heard this?
I have heard that.
Again, this is a great book. Again, if anybody wants to learn how to sell with a story, it's a great book. But we noticed that you do it also on the calls, and it was very, very, very powerful. So another things that I heard you do, you do a lot of labeling. Can you share? How, again, if you do it intentionally or you just this is part of your
what do you mean labeling? Please help me.
It's a different
you kind
term,
of summarize and label an emotion. Again, sounds like this is very upsetting to you that you need to deal with tenants that don't paying. They kind of share their experience and then you repeat what they say and you put a label of feeling about it.
Yes, so I was taught to do that by the Daily Dial because I had a problem with that because I was not actively listening. So like in the role plays, they would share stuff and I'd be like, well, you should just do this and this and this. And I would miss things. I would miss small details. And they're like, Munif, you need to actively listen. And I was like, how the heck do I do that? And then they're like, just rephrase and validate. Part of it's like validating and then use what you learned in that validation of what the seller told you to let them know you're actively listening, but even for yourself to when you repeat it and you're saying it, you know what the situation is and everyone's on the same page. So I was taught that from, it was actually Keston Glasgow. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. Keston taught me that in the Daily Dial.
Munif, I mean, you've seen, going through the closer or lip sync, obviously you've been exposed to different styles and approach, right? I mean, you've seen so many, and this is what's so beautiful about what we do, right?
Right.
What do you feel on your end makes your approach a bit different, a bit unique? I mean, what about your approach and the way your strategy towards the conversations and the sellers? What makes you unique?
So that's such a good question. So somebody actually asked me, somebody asked me to be on their podcast on Friday, and it's actually Keston. It's Keston's podcast, the guy who helped me. So I was like, of course, I'm so happy to be. And one of his partners, I think her name is Melissa or Michelle. I'm so sorry if I messed up your name. She was like, hey, you're a closer. Can you come in and close one of our deals on our podcast? Or, can we see how you close? And I responded, I don't consider myself a closer. That's just not something I like. I'm like, oh, I'm a closer. I'm going to close. I consider myself as somebody who is trained on having excellent conversations with people. And so it's so funny, dude. It's so funny you asked me that question because there's a whiteboard behind me. I don't know if you can see. So I do everything out of my bedroom, and I have a whiteboard, and I had to actually write in my whiteboard what the game Closers Olympics was for me, because when I had to constrain my sales into a 30-minute format where the goal is just to close the deal and not care about the seller necessarily. You're just here to play a game of closing.
Yeah.
It internally, like, there was a conflict. There was like a huge conflict, and it took me days to figure it out. And when I had the conflict, I actually went on the role playing. I did a role play, and I tried to be more like RJ Bates, and I was very like aggressive. I'm like, hey, look, I'm going to buy a deal today. Da, 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 da. And the role play guy I was role playing with, his name is Jason Lombardi, and he goes, Munif, like, you didn't care about me at all. I was like, I didn't even know who I was talking to, and you didn't even smile once in our conversation. And that told me a few things. That told me, number one, I got to be myself. Like, I got to be myself 100%. And number two, it made me, I almost cried, because what he's telling me, Jason was saying, you're somebody that when we always talk, you always smile, and you didn't even smile once. Who are you? And that made me feel, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the kind of person I am. I'm not changing that for anybody. So day 2 and day 3 of my practices, I was like, let me just be myself. So I redid the rules for the game. And I wrote this. I wrote, the game of the Closers Olympics is meant to be enjoyed. If you're not having fun, you are losing. Have fun, collect points, and watch the clock. And I made a new point system. Instead of like getting a deal, it's like, hey, making this. So instead of building rapport, it's 5 points for making the seller feel comfortable, right? Like instead of creative option, it's getting creative with the seller. Instead of negotiation, it's telling the seller what I can't do. So I had to reframe the entire game to where it's congruent to myself. And I'm like, okay, I feel good about this. I'm going to be me. And so as far as unique, I don't think anyone else has done something like this. I don't think anyone else framed it, and they were just trying to play the game. But for me, it had to be my game.
Yeah. That's so amazing what you say. And I think, again, over and over, we see it again and again. I think the highest, and we say it a lot, I mean, the highest level of salesmanship, right? It's not sale. Right? It's you don't sell anything, you just be yourself, right? This is the highest level, and you manage somehow to, reprogram it in a sense to find your place, your comfortable place, your you inside that scope. And this is maybe what brought you to that level, you being you, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And just a follow-up question, because I think we spoke also with RJ last week, and I heard from you, is that you need to find your own authentic voice that you feel comfortable. Don't try to be somebody else. So what was the process that you found your voice that you feel comfortable? Because a lot of people, they're watching and they're trying to imitate, or they compare themselves to other styles. So how do you find your own voice that you feel comfortable with?
That's such a good question. So it's because I asked Pace. I like raised my hand in one of our Zooms, and I'm like, Pace, how do I be a better closer? And he said, you have to be yourself. I'm like, well, that's a shitty answer. He's like, well, no. Because when he was, and we all know Pace Morby, he's an amazing closer. In my opinion, he's the best. I think he's the best, undoubtedly, no questions asked, the best. He said when he was learning, he was trying to be like his mentor. And his mentor was a California surfer dude who wore like Hawaiian shirt and flip-flops and like talk like this, bro. And so he's like, oh, that's the secret. He's like, that's the secret. And so he wore shorts and flip-flops to his buy appointments and felt so awkward. And he's like, this is weird. And then he brings it up to his mentor. He's like, I tried to be like you and it doesn't work. And his mentor starts laughing. And his mentor goes, dude, when I was learning, I tried to be like my mentor. And my mentor has a lisp. So he talks like this. And so he thought that was the secret. And so he would go to his buy appointments and talk like this. And it was weird. And so the moral of the story is you just be yourself. So he said, Munif, do not be Pace Morby. Do not be Pace Morby. Be Munif Saza. Be the best Munif Saza. And so what I did, this is something I actually did and something I do. I would have conversations with people I love and just fun conversations that I would listen to them and I go, how do I talk to somebody I'm having fun with and just having a great conversation with, and how can I implement that in my conversations with sellers?
That's awesome.
Guys,
So,
if you have
guys,
any questions, by the way, just for everybody, any question? I think we're gonna start going a bit more technical,
Sure.
with you. So if anybody has questions, rebuttals, objections, or whatever you wanna try and get out of Munif, one of the best closers, please put it on there.
Yes. So again, one question we have here: do you close most of your deals with terms? Again, you're a sub 2 guy, or you always lead with a wholesale, like a cash offer, buy as is. So what's your strategy when you get into a call?
99% cash.
99% cash.
I only started doing terms like a month and a half ago because
Okay.
they teach it. They're like, look, like let's learn, like let's have you guys master the basics before we start doing terms. Like a lot of people think that before they even know how to wholesale a property, they come in and they're like, I'm going to start pitching creative finance. And it's like, look, if you can't even negotiate a cash deal, it's like, you're going to have a hard time doing a more creative and more complicated deal. So yeah, even me, like 95 to 99% of everything I do is cash.
Okay.
And I think it's so correct because we know, again, when you go into the creative sphere, right? It's a world by itself, right? Even it's expertise that you need to develop by itself, right? So trying to do both while you don't have still the base, right? The wholesaling fundamentals, going and trying to jump to creative, it can, instead of taking you forward, it actually can put you backwards, right? So having that foundation is super, super important. Us knowing, what level creative brings you, right? It's a different story. It's a different ballgame.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's ask again more like tactical questions, because the kind of the mindset. Do you believe in scripts, or do you work with the scripts, or you kind of master it that at this point you kind of just have a conversation and see where the sellers would take you?
I don't believe in a script, but I believe in structure. So
Okay.
the structure that we use is called the Sandler Sales Submarine.
Okay.
And for those of you that don't know, I know you guys shaking your head, so you must have read the book. It's called You Can't Learn to Ride a Bicycle at a Seminar, I think is the book. And it's just a structure of like, hey, like talk about this stuff first, and then talk about this stuff, and then talk about this stuff. And don't jump the gun and talk here before you make sure you talk about this stuff. So it's a helpful structure. I used to do scripts, but I can't. And then Pace said something. He said a line that I really liked. He says, "My only script is the seller's emotions." And I'm like, ooh, I'm keeping that. And so anytime I get stuck, I'm like, my only script is the seller's emotions. And then I go back to that. Now, there's downsides to that. The downside is you can get lost in the seller's emotions, right? And look, that's what happened to me. Like I learned a lot from the Closers Olympics. I learned there's a gap between me and RJ. There's a huge gap in me and RJ. And actually not even just RJ, but a lot of the other closers. There's huge fundamental gaps between my skills and theirs. I personally, like, take it how you will, I personally don't believe I'm the second best closer in the country. It was a competition. It was fun. We all had it. It was a thing. Of course. I just don't believe that one bit. And so I'm like, let me use this as an opportunity to get amazing feedback from very, very high level judges, the audience, and even the other closers who are giving me feedback. Because holy crap, as a student of sales, you cannot get a better opportunity to get amazing 100%. Feedback, right? So like one feedback I got, I'm working on right now is like, okay, great rapport. Now use that rapport as leverage to the negotiation side and really like get something going instead of just hanging here. Okay, Munif, you're great here. Great. Now use that as leverage here. Go in for it. Use that as leverage. Use it to bring the seller to make a good decision for the seller.
that's what's so amazing also in doing sales, right? Because it's endless, right? I mean,
Yes.
there's no, there's never end to it. You can always get better, new approaches, new techniques, new styles. You mentioned a very important thing, like what dictates your script is the emotions of the seller. Can you
Yeah.
a bit elaborate more on this? What do you mean when you say that?
That's a good question. It's hard to describe that. So it's
Just
like,
give us maybe a scenario, like
With the
yeah.
structure of the call, with the structure of your call, how you said you need to do this before you do this, how
Mhm.
do you take the emotion and decide how to take the conversation
So
to where you want?
So like for the structure, like the first part of the sales structure is like bonding and rapport, right? So like you can build bonding and rapport in like 5 seconds. Like you can just build it, and which is me. I use my tonality. I'm like, oh hey, how's it going? And depending if it's a man or woman that picks up, I'm gonna talk to a man and a woman a little differently. Because if I use a certain tone with a man, he'll be like, "What the heck? This is weird." But it's similar. It's like as if they're my friend, right? And so I'm gonna be very friendly, and I'm just gonna overwhelm them with friendliness until they have no choice but to match my friendliness or completely reject it. And then when we get to the next section, which is pain, or which is actually upfront contract, which is like, hey, is this a bad time?
Yeah.
You've seen like somebody go, hey, I probably called you at a bad time. You've seen all that stuff, and they're like, no, let's talk, right? I want them to be on the same page as me, and like, hey, let's have a conversation here. So once they're there and we're in pain, it's like that's very emotional. Something that's painful to you, Chaim, might not be painful to me, right? So like that's when like my only script is the seller's emotion comes in handy, and I want to hear them. I want to get them talking, right? I'm gonna ask them about the property. I don't really care about the property, but I want them to start talking about it. And then once they like, they're gonna like give me stuff and like, oh yeah, and then this has been a headache. I'm like, headache? How so? What's been a headache? And just like asking them in an inviting way where they can just talk about their pain and they can talk about their emotions, and you can use the emotions on like really, I want to emotionally connect to the seller, so I really know where they're at. And the technical details on how to do that, I can't tell you because that's hard. That's like really hard for me to like be like, do this. That part of it's like just practicing emotionally connecting with everybody you meet, right? So my mom's really good at that. I watched her as a kid, watching my mom emotionally connect with like everybody. And so I'm like, oh, that's how you do that. So my only script is a seller's emotions. I'm listening for any emotion that they share, even if it's a sigh, even if it's like, like, hey, that sounds tough. Sounds like you're really stressed out. Are you okay? And like, I'm just bringing the emotions into it. And I really want to know, because like, ultimately, in my opinion, somebody sells to a wholesaler from an emotional standpoint, not necessarily a logical standpoint. And I tell people, I'm like, look,
100%.
logically, like you should just like list the property. You should just like list the property. You should just like go get a realtor. Like, what's stopping you from taking those actions? And we explore that. But a lot of people are like, no, I'm just done. I just want out. I'm just done. I'm just done. I'm just done. And like, okay, let's like how like this is how you're let's figure out what your life's gonna look like after you're done. Like what are you excited about after being done? And then like we talk about that. So I hope that gives a little bit of insight. It's tough. It's a very emotional sentence. My only script is a seller's emotion. It teaches you nothing about sales from that sentence alone. But if you're somebody who's practicing emotionally connecting, that's something I kept in the back of my head, and it got me a long way.
Beautiful.
Yeah. But I think you have principles for the call. Again, you don't have a script, but you have, again, as you mentioned, it's bond and rapport, and then pain, and then you take this call depending on where the sellers takes you based on their emotions. So what is the next step? When do you transition to the presentation? I would assume that the next step would be to offer the solution. So how do you make the transition when you decide, you know what, I have something to work with, I need to go to the next principle? So what's the next principle for you?
So for me, it's like I want to see if they're ready to make a decision, right? Like,
Okay.
like, well, I'm like, hey, is this like something that you want to decide on soon? Like, I want to find out. You know what I
You
mean?
actually done it in the closer Olympics. I mean, this, the second sentence you had, like, assuming I'll get the prize, is that something you want to move forward today, right? So you actually
Yeah.
did it even from the get go.
That
You
was
want
my
to,
upfront contract. So,
right?
and you can
Yes.
have multiple upfront contracts throughout, and that, like, I'll use upfront contracts as like I'll sprinkle them in if I'm in a transition. And like I want to go at their pace. Like I don't want to go and move things at my pace. Like who the hell am I to like tell somebody barge in on their life and tell them they need to move in my pace? Like who the hell am I to do that? Right? Like this is their decision. This is their house. This is their problem. This is their life. I can
Mhm.
sure I can offer a solution, but maybe I can't. And like let's figure that out. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe they should list it, or maybe they're not ready to make a decision right now. Maybe they got too much going on. This is just something. So I probe that and I'm like, hey, like, is this something like we should be making a decision on? And they're like, yeah, like I would, like I really would. That's when I go into budget. That's like when I'm like, hey, like this is what we can do for you. Like this is what, here's some options you have without selling to me. Here's one where you can sell to me, and like what do you want, right? And I like to encourage people to make decisions, but I don't like to push. So that's something that like I get a lot of flack about from like other closers. They're like, you should be pushier. Like you should be pushier. And I'm just like, that's just not me. I like unless someone's being an idiot, like a total idiot, I will push them. I'm like, look, you're being an idiot, right? Like you're being stupid. Your house is gonna go into foreclosure. Like you're gonna be put on the streets. Or if it's like one of my friends who's gonna be like, let's say they drink and they're gonna drive. I'm like, no, like absolutely not. I'm taking your keys. Like you're being an idiot. There are moments where I'm like very, very stern about certain things, and then
Mhm.
most of it, if it's like they're actually fine, I'm not gonna push them. I'm really. It's just
Mhm.
not my personality. It's not kind of person I am.
In a sense, if I understand it a bit more of your approach, that if everything goes well, you make them feel very comfortable in a conversation. At the end of the day, you let them close themselves,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
You take
Yes.
them through a journey, right? And you disqualify until until they manage. At the end of the day, they sell to themselves, right? They close
Yes,
themselves in a sense, right?
yes,
This is
absolutely.
completely different, and I can understand also. I mean, again, just raising RJ, it's different. It's amazing to see, right? It's amazing to see two different strategies, right? That RJ is, being more aggressive. Like, what the hell? The guy doesn't want to close today. I'm gonna tell him to close today, right? And you're saying, no, hold on. The guy's not ready yet. Maybe he needs some more time, right? I mean, in a different world, Monif, if it's not closers Olympics, are you aiming to close in the first call, or you how do you do it?
Never. No, never. I mean,
Never.
unless they tell me they're ready. Like I asked them, I'm like, is this something you want to move forward with today? And if they're like, yeah, actually, yes, then maybe, right? But like, no, I don't. I just mostly have follow ups. Like, I mostly do follow ups, and Al taught me this. He's like, Munif, I never close on the first day, and I'm like, that's right, me neither. So, yeah, I'm not, and it's not even in my seller calls. Like, I have JV partnerships in my real estate businesses, where people approach me and they're like, hey, I want to work with you, da 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 da. Or maybe I approach somebody, I'm like, I want to work with you, and my rule is like, I'm not I don't want to convince somebody to work with me. Like I just don't. So there are people who are like, prove to me we should work together, and I'm like, I don't really want to do that. Like I'll like if you ask me, I'll show you what I'm doing. Like let's do this together. But like I'd rather work with people who are excited to work with me, right? Who really want to. Like I know you and me, if we work, we'll make a lot of money. But if you're not really excited to work with me, I'm actually not interested, right? And people will tell me I'm a bad businessman because I'm losing opportunities. But I'm like, no, I don't care. Like this has to be fun for me. Business has to be fun for me.
100%.
And like if I'm not having fun, I'm losing. I'm losing, 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 losing. So I'm like, if someone's not going to be have fun with me and be excited to work with me, and I'm not excited to work with them, I'd rather just not even make the money with them. I'd rather make money with somebody else.
You being, again, you bring a lot of emotions into the game, right? And you
Yes.
put it in your call, right? You really, it's when you talk to somebody and he shares his story, he shares his pain, it shows that you are very emotional with him. You bring yourself to emotional step, and That's amazing. Again, for good and bad, it is what it is, right?
It is what it is, man.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a quick
And your friend is here. This is Ayal. Again, Ayal saying hi.
Yes, my boy.
He's excited to be here. He said here, tell them about the Daily Dial and Friday Fanatics, which I think you mentioned already, right?
I mentioned the Daily Dial. Friday Fanatics is actually where me and Ayal, we and a couple other people, we actually hold our own role play sessions, and that's where really I got to connect with him and like learn from him. Like I'm a host of it, and then when he speaks, I'm like writing my notes. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is good. This is good. So I learned like third-party stories from him. He was like telling somebody to use them, and I'm like, I need to use them more. So
That's awesome.
I learned so much from that guy. He's amazing.
Awesome.
That's great. That's great. So I think there's more technical because you mentioned that you don't close on the first call. Usually you close on the follow-up. So I guess somebody asking after you got, again, I would maybe again rephrase the question to make it a little different. So you get all the emotions usually on the first call. Again, why do you want to sell? And then you dig deep on the pain. And then on the follow-up call, you usually make the offer. So how do you, again, and I assume that you believe that people make decision to sell their property based on their emotions. And when you make the offer, it's usually a very logical conversation when you discuss numbers. So how do you make the transition to get to this mode again without losing the leverage of the emotions? Because scripts are the emotions of the sellers.
Right. So, so it's actually the same. I just do the same stuff at the second call. I start from the beginning, like totally
From the beginning.
Totally.
So even if it's within one day, because
well,
tell them, you know what,
it's smaller. It's smaller.
Okay.
So I'm still doing, oh, hey, how's it going? Oh my God, what'd you eat for breakfast today? It's just like some stupid thing, right? I'm not, I'm like, okay, so hey, where we left off, sounds like you're dealing with this, and this. And then you were going to think about this. And I'm just painting the picture in their head, and they're like, oh yeah, crap. And I'm like, yeah, and then if you don't sell, this happens, and if you do sell this, so like, where are you, dude? And I'm like very casual. Like I don't do Mr. blah blah. I don't do Mrs. I say dude and like buddy. Like I talk to sellers like I'm talking to my friends. And I have friends of all ages. So it's very easy for me to do that. And I'm like, where are you at? Like have you thought about it? Like where are you at? And then I ask questions like, what's stopping you from selling right now? I ask questions like in the negatives, like what's stopping you? What's your biggest fear about working with me? I just like straight up ask them those kind of questions. And those are very emotional questions. And then I address it. I'm like, and I'll tell them, I'm like, I'll either validate your fears and tell you, yeah, you should be afraid of this. Or I'll say, no, you shouldn't be afraid of this because of X, Y, and Z. And I say that up front before I ask the questions. And then I'll even go, hey, like, this is what you didn't ask me that you should have asked me. This is what other people asked me.
Right. That's a good question.
Oh yeah.
That's a good question.
So comfortable. And then it's like, hey, like what do we, and then I ask, this is my close. My close is, what do we do next? And when they're ready for that question, I ask them that question, and then they tell me to send them the paperwork, and I send them the paperwork.
So beautiful. Do you believe with Encore Price, how do you transition to the number that you give them from what do we do next and presenting the
yeah, so,
I tell because them that's I think a lot of people miss. This is a tricky transition. They told you the pain.
Yeah, yes, I've been. So throughout the whole conversation, I'm like, I'm a wholesaler. We do da 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 da. We're like here. Like I know you're here, but like we're like here. So like, what do we do to get you here? Like let's talk. Let's be here for a bit and let's talk. No. I'm probably not your buyer. Like I'm right here. Like this is good. This is benefits. Like let's talk about the benefits of what you get. I mean, you get this. This is great. But like you're here. Like what is like is this like? Do you need to be here? Can you be here? Like I sprinkle that in through the conversation, and when I say I'm here, I'm actually really here, right? I'm not really, but and I say it in a way where like they're not insulted, and this is something I'm playing with. This is something I'm still practicing and playing with. Where I'm like, yeah, I'm here. I know that's terrible. I know not something, but I'm here. And when they get me here, they feel good. Like, well, I'm like, what can you do? And they're like, oh, no, that doesn't work. But like maybe or maybe I'll do an option agreement. I'll say, hey, sign this agreement. Let's see if I can bring somebody in who can actually buy at that price.
Yeah, that was great. That was great. That
you know what I mean?
That was awesome. You tell them, listen, I don't think I'm your buyer, but what if I bring somebody that can offer you this? Is that would be something that you'll be interested in? You did it in your first call, I think the 15 minutes call in the close of the Olympics.
I don't even remember what I did. I don't like remember what I did in my calls. Every conversation is so different for me. I remember sellers. If I talk to a seller again and I'm like, oh yeah, you're the guy with the red fire truck. Like I remember, but like, on that call, I'm like, I don't know. But yeah, I will do that. And I will then tell them, cool, let me shop this around. And then I use other people, third-party stories to like beat the seller's price. And I'll be like, oh, I showed this to Eyal and he's said this is what he's going to do. And I told Eyal, no way, man. And they're like, oh man, what's going to happen? And then I always bring up, I'm like, what happens if you don't sell this thing? What happens if you don't sell? What happens if you don't sell? And look, some people are just not motivated. And like, I don't waste too much time with them. I just have my team do the follow-up with them. Right. And for me, I'm just like really waiting for their pain threshold to like hit a certain moment where they're like, I need to sell this. And I just hit them with different stuff. I hit them with like, hey, like, what if I did this? What if I cover closing costs? Like, what's the best you can do? And I'll say like, hey, maybe my MAO is 230. I'll tell them, I'm like, hey, when I picked up the phone, like I wanted this at 200. I wanted this at 200. Do I need it at 200? No. Do I want it at 200? Yes. Like I need it, like for me to actually buy it, I can go a little bit higher, but like where are you, man? Like where can you be? Let's take 200 off the table. Like let's figure this out together so we can both win here. So I sprinkle these in throughout the conversation. I'm like, I don't want to hit somebody, right? I want them to like know where I'm going with it. And so they're like comfortable with it. They're comfortable, like, okay, we're really going to be here. I feel good about being here. Like, let's do this. I'm excited to sign with Munif. I want to work with Munif.
That's your power, buddy. This is it. This is it. You being so comfortable in the conversation and also reflect on the other person to make him feel comfortable. That's amazing, right?
Thank you.
No script.
Yeah, I think you lead again. It's amazing how the styles again. This is probably every person that we brings again. You lead with friendliness and building rapport. This is your strength. This is how you leverage it to your benefits, as opposed to RJ, which is he leads with authority and direct. Again, he's establishing his expertise, and this is how he leverage the conversation. So it's amazing. Let's see. We have another asking, when you have your team to follow ups, how does the call like? Do they just check on the motivation and urgency?
Yeah, just about. They're like, hey, where are you? Because my team is like, they're like me, right? So they're very friendly people. So they're just like, how are you doing? And they'll talk for like 10 minutes about something. And like, where are you? Like, what are you doing? We're just checking in, making sure you're good. Like, what's going on? Where are you at? Okay, cool. Like, we'll check in with you in like 3 weeks, like just to see where you're at. Like, no pressure. And so, we have not lost a deal to another wholesaler with our approach. Yeah, we have not. Okay. And we're good at scorching the earth. Like we're totally good at it. So like we'll just, if there's like, I got a call.
You don't sign it, nobody signs it.
Yeah, exactly. We'll just say, well, make sure they're not wholesalers, and then we do the whole scorch thing, and we're just so casual about it. And we're like, well, yeah, just be careful. Like, and then we use third-party stories of what happened to somebody else. And so and it's so funny. Somebody's tried scorching the earth on my deal.
Tell us.
Oh yeah,
it was a game.
It was a game. It was like somebody scorched us. It was.
Please explain to people what is scorching the earth, so people again who doesn't know the terms in the wholesaling context.
So scorching the earth is when you tell a seller, hey, watch out for other people who pretend to be your buyer, but they're actually not your buyer. they'll put down $100 earnest money and they'll sell your deal to a real buyer. And if they can't sell your deal, they screw you and they're bad. And so look, in our contract's assignable, meaning we can sell our contract. Our contract has $100 earnest money. So it's very like wholesaler friendly. And so we're wholesalers. So I had somebody tell my seller, you know, hey, like, watch out. These guys are wholesalers. I'm a real buyer. So she sends me this text and it's like a lot, right? And she's freaking out. We don't even have it under contract. But what we do, like, this is how we do business. Like, we actually care about the sellers. Believe it or not, I actually care about the people I'm on the phone with. Every person I meet, on some level, I actually do care about them. And so she had tenants that I cared about who were elderly and disabled and they needed to move out. And so I had one of my guys meet with the tenants to help them through the process. Like, that's just something we did. We're like, let's actually help. We're not just going to like put the tenants out on the street. Like, so when she messaged me that, I was like, call your tenants right now. My guy is right there in their living room, helping them figure out the next steps. If we were a wholesaler and we were never going to buy your property, would we be doing that? And she goes, oh my gosh, you're so right. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And that is that being good to people, actually taking care of people and being absolutely great, absolutely excellent to people you work with, that can come in handy when somebody tries to tarnish your reputation. It's like, if I didn't take that extra mile, I wouldn't have had the leverage to say, hey, like, why would we even be taking care of your tenants if we were just going to screw you? Like, you know what I mean? She was like, oh my God, you're right. I'm so sorry. I'm so nervous right now. Holy crap. So she blocked that other person. She just blocked them. And we got the deal.
The fact that she even shared that text with you, right? Even you not explaining her like that's not correct, but the fact that she even shared that communication that he had from other person to you, that shows the level of rapport and the level of connection you had with that seller, right? She shared it with you. She said, listen, this is what they say about you, you know. So that's amazing. That shows rapport. 100%.
Thank you.
That's amazing. So when is your goal to quit your job, your 9-to-5 job?
That's such a funny question. My cousin was on the phone asking me that today. He's like, you're going to quit this upcoming year? And I was like, actually, part of me wants to just quit when I hit $1 million. I just want to hit $1 million and go, all right, I did it. And now I can quit. I don't know. My job, I'm not passionate about it. It's cybersecurity. My younger brother is actually getting his doctorate degree in cybersecurity. Like, he's gonna he's really intelligent, way smarter than me, and he's gonna go and do that. I'm not super passionate about it. I think it's interesting, but I like the people I work with, and I have an obligation to to that job. So when it is time for me to leave, I want to make sure I do right by everybody. Right. So one of my jokes is like, have $1 million, but the time will be right when obviously the finances are there to help me, but also when I actually build a team that I can train and bring up to speed, and I can go, hey, you guys are good. Like, here's the team. We're good. Like, Munif is out. Like, Munif is out of here. If I could technically leave in like 4 months, 5 months, but I would be doing some damage if I just left that early, to be honest with you. Like, I would be hurting some people and their livelihoods.
Got it. Listen, your story is amazing. Where can people find more about you, what you do? Are you active on social media at all?
Yeah. Instagram, just Munif Saza. Just search Munif Saza on Instagram. You're going to find me. I'm the only Munif Saza on the planet Earth. So, because Saza is not a real name. It's a made-up name. My grandma, when she was pregnant with my father, there was 11 children. My dad was the middle child. Back then, you couldn't really tell if it was a boy or a girl. My grandfather had a vision and a dream where he would have a son, and he would name his son Malik Saza, and his son would travel faraway lands. And that's what happened. My dad was a boy. They named him Malik Saza. That's a totally different name from my grandparents. They're Kauser. My dad's the only Saza because it came from a dream. My dad traveled faraway lands, and now there's like a bunch of Sazas running around.
Wow. Where do you live? What's your market?
So those are two different questions. I live in right outside of Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And my market is anywhere there's buyer activity.
Okay.
I
Nice.
don't spend money on marketing. Everything I do is JVing. So all I do is people send me leads. And so it's an interesting business model. I'm experimenting with it.
Tell us.
So
Yeah.
there's 3 states, right? It's 3 steps. There's lead generation, acquisition, disposition. And so I'm just like, all right, well, I've got disposition people. I don't dispo anything at all. I don't dispo any deals. I suck at comping. I'm not really, I'm so new to this stuff. I need help. So I have people who literally what they do, all they do is dispo. They've got huge hedge funds and buyers lists all around the country. They dispo all my deals. And then I have people who lead generate, and all they do is just put money into the machine and they generate leads and they send them over to me. And me and my team, there's about like 15 of us now, and we're just closers and lead managers, and we all work on commission. And we just like we have a great CRM, and we do all the follow-ups, and we turn leads into contracts. That's our job. Beautiful. And we just split the assignment in 3 ways, and it's been working for us, and it's amazing, and we love it.
Sounds amazing. So before we let you go again, we want to let people know that for people who don't know, want to learn about wholesaling, how to start, we have a coaching program. We're looking to add few more people before the end of the month. So if you're interested to buy a wholesaling business and you want to take it to the next level, please reach out to us. Wholesalefromisrael.com. Again, we would love to work with you and hear about you. And Munif, just to close, listen, it was an awesome a privilege and an honor to have you here. Again, you have a bright future. And we can't wait to hear back from you after you quit your job and you become a full-time assassin, building an empire of lead generation and conversion, because you definitely have the skill set, the talent to become one, and we can't wait to see what the future holds for you.
Thank you. It was my honor being here. It was my highest honor to be here to just share the floor with you 2 gentlemen and the community here. I actually didn't know how can are you guys active on social media? How can I tell more people about you? How can I do that for you guys? You guys have been so great to me.
Again,
so
yeah,
go ahead. Go.
No, so again, our community is mainly based as on Israelis. That's the concept of the group. So again, the language and Hebrew, most of it in Hebrew is very oriented to Israelis. So yeah, I mean, any person which is mainly Israeli or virtual wholesaling, we will be more than happy. That's the platform. The platform is making wholesaling and the whole concept of wholesaling much more approachable to the Israeli Hebrew audience.
Okay.
And this is what we do, my friend. So any help will be appreciated for sure.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. You guys are amazing. It was my honor to be here. Thank you so much.
This is Eyal. Rooting for you. Yeah,
he's my brother.
All right, my friend. Thank you very much. Pleasure to have you again. We will stay in touch, and we want to see what's next for you in the next phase for you. Thank you very much, man.
Thanks again.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Munif. Bye.